Many people have made up in their minds that there's just no evidence for God. And this is something that a lot of people, they really come up with this idea, and then after they have this idea, they run with it. They run with it, and they're going to hold on to the information that they get that supports this claim. This is a presupposition, but if we take the time to really look at the evidence, I think we'll see that there had to be a designer, and not only was there a designer, but there was a specific designer, and he has given us revelation. One of the first pieces of evidence that we have is the design that we see in nature. And when we see design as humans, we're able to recognize beauty, and this beauty doesn't have any kind of purpose. This beauty doesn't have any kind of functionality to it. A beauty that doesn't help a creature in its survival or its fitness. This is something that lets you see it's only for the visual effects that it has on us. A good example of this is the zebra. And it's real funny how scientists that believe in evolution, how they'll hold so tight to everything just evolved into ways that help it survive. And this is the reason why it has all the different aspects visually and of its anatomy. So when you see these creatures and they try to make an explanation for everything, some of them, they're really just kind of funny. And what they say about the zebra, they're really clueless, but this is what they had to say about the zebra. This was a secular site. So they said the question as to why zebras have stripes is one that's long stumped researchers. It's pretty obvious why it's stumping them, because they're trying to find something where there's nothing. They're trying to find out why a zebra has stripes when it's simple. The zebra was made by God, and the reason why it looks that way, so God can get the glory, so we can see the beauty of his creation and we can see the design. It's very simple. If they would just stop right there, then they won't be stumped anymore. But reading on, theories suggested it helped them camouflage, or stripes served as a identity name tag for zebras to recognize each other. But newer research suggests the stripes help them repel those pesky horseflies. Now, let's just say that it was some kind of camouflage and that helped them survive. Look at all the other animals in the Africa, in the same area, that don't have these stripes. So why is it that the zebra would evolve to grow these stripes, and then the antelope wouldn't grow and then same thing even with the flies. Why would the stripes help the zebra repel flies? How come the antelope doesn't have stripes to help it get rid of the flies? It just doesn't make sense. So these are just rescuing devices that they throw on top of this when we see something that's obviously beauty to us, and it just doesn't cross their mind, and maybe that's why it was made, for its beauty. That's just something that I think people should think about when we look at creation. A lot of these things are just beautiful just because of that very reason, because they're beautiful. In the 1970s, there were a lot of scientists that were talking about this big freeze. It was even on Time magazine. They were talking about this big freeze that was coming, and all the top scientists knew this freeze was coming, and they were telling everybody about this freeze and how to prepare for it. And then it turns out that it never really happened. And this just shows you that even the top minds can be wrong, and it happens a lot. It happens all the time. There's new information always coming out debunking what they thought this theory was true. There's been so many different theories over the years about the universe. There was the steady state universe, and then they found out new information and found out that wasn't true, and the oscillating universe, and they found out that wasn't true, and now it's the Big Bang. But who knows in a couple of years what the new theory will be. And the fact is, scientists are always changing their theories and changing their ideas. And even the top greatest minds, all connected, can have the same idea and still be wrong. And this happened in the 70s with the big freeze that they were looking at the environment, and they thought for sure this was coming, and it never came. So it goes to show you that you can't trust men. We are fallible, and one thing we do is we follow. And it's so easy for a person to see a lot of other people believing in one thing, and then wanting to fit in and not wanting to be left out. They jump right aboard, and they start holding on to the same pieces of evidence that another person held on to, instead of thinking for themselves. Now, another piece of evidence that really points to a creator is evolutionists believe in natural selection, but natural selection does one thing, and it selects. It selects already existing information in DNA that is already inside of creation. It's already inside of creatures. It's already inside of our genome. So it selects already existing DNA, and what it really does is it's the opposite of evolution. If you have two dogs, one with long hair and one with short hair, and they go into a very hot environment, the dog with the long hair has less chances of surviving. So the short-haired dogs are going to mate, and there's going to be more and more short-haired dogs. That doesn't mean that there's a new short-haired dog that evolved. That's actually the opposite. All the long-haired genes are now gone out of the genome because the long-haired dogs have died off. And this is what we see when we look at what they call evolution. We see a loss of genes. We see a loss of information as the environment selects certain genes that are compatible with different climates. So when we see animals changing, we don't see them gaining new information. New information is not given. It's actually being taken away. And this is why we have new species, and this is why we have different types of dogs, because the breeding is actually weeding out information and weeding out DNA. And this is why you have dogs like the Chihuahua and the Poodle. These are not evolved from the wolf. These are devolution. These are lost. This is a loss of information, and and these dogs all have to be taken to the vet, and they have to be kept by people. They wouldn't survive in the wild on their own because they're not evolved. They're not any better, So this is selective breeding, and that's the same thing the environment does. It selects genes that are already there. So this just shows us that this information had to be created at one time. So in DNA is very complex, and you can't take anything away from DNA and it still be DNA. There's nothing. So if you reduce DNA in any area, we'll be dead. We need every single part of it. This irreducible complexity of DNA is very important. And what you have to pay attention to is the rescuing devices that the atheists will come with. They will tell you, what they do is they'll come with a story. Well, no, maybe this happened, actually maybe a long time ago, our DNA had this piece and added it. But what they're doing is they're making up a story in their head, and they're telling you maybe this could have happened, but there's no evidence for these things actually happening. The evidence points to us needing DNA all as a whole as it is. That's what the evidence points to. So there is no evidence for the stories that they come up. These are called rescuing devices. There's no evidence for these rescuing devices actually being true. They want to hold so tightly to the theory that they make up stories in their head, and then they sound very complex, and they sound very intelligent, and people just jump along with them. But you have to remember that these are just stories that people are making up to say, oh, well, it could have happened this way, and there's so many different ones, but none of these are fact. None of these really have evidence for them. Lastly, why does all this tie into Christianity? Well, for one, Jesus is the Word. God spoke. And the Word of God is information. This is what we have inside the genome of everybody. This is what we have in our minds working, is information. This is what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that God spoke these things into existence. And the Word of God literally changes people. It supernaturally changes people when they start taking in the Word of God. It's like a whole new person is born. You get a complete system reboot. The Word of God has stood the test of time. When you think about it, is there any other religion whose writing is used by other religions? Did the Bible steal from Buddha? Or did the Bible steal from the Hindu? Or does the Bible steal from the Mormons? Or does the Bible steal from the... No, they all steal from the Bible. When we read the Bible as it is, this is why we have the Christian religion, because the Bible speaks of those following Christ as Christians. This is why we know the Bible is true, because everyone knows that this is true history. And this is why the Muslims, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and even now the Buddhists believe that somehow Jesus was some kind of enlightened person. Everyone wants to steal from the story of our history because they know it's very true history. This is why we know that the Bible is the truth, because it matches up scientifically. In the beginning, this was the start of time. God created the heavens. This is the creation of space, and the earth, the creation of matter. All these things had to come into place at the same time. Space, time, and matter all came into being at the same time. This adds up with what the Bible tells us. Then we also have the history that is given to us. The history in the Bible matches up with archaeology. And then we also even have the emotional and the moral aspect of the Bible, telling us about man's hearts, about our conscience, and telling us how the Word of God will transform a person, as we have seen through history, how Christianity has not only changed the individual, but have changed complete nations. The first scientists were actually Christians, and this is why Christians had such an impact on science, because they believed in a universe that was created by a mind, and that they could follow after the thoughts of this mind. And this is why they had a reason to believe that science could be done, because they believed that the universe followed certain laws and that we were made to understand these laws. You know, in an atheistic mind frame, there would be no reason for us to understand the world around us. If we evolved simply to survive, there would be no reason for us to go any farther than picking berries and killing animals. But people are building spaceships, people are looking at the stars, people are exploring the depths of the sea. This shows that we are created specially in order to understand the creation and to see the beauty in it. Something to think about.